Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell has just announced that Senator Richard Burr has temporarily asked to step down as chair of the Intelligence Committee, effective tomorrow. This after the FBI seized Senator Burr's phone at his D.C. residence on Wednesday, part of an investigation into possible insider trading. Federal authorities have been looking into whether Senator Burr used information he gained as a member of the so-called Gang of Eight top congressional leaders who received the nation's most secret intelligence, whether he did that to sell off stocks before the market plummeted, before most people were widely aware of the risks of the growing COVID-19 pandemic. In March, Senator Burr's attorney released a statement saying, in part, quote, "The law is clear that any American, including a senator, may participate in the stock market based on public information, as Senator Burr did." When this issue arose, Senator Burr immediately asked the Senate Ethics Committee to conduct a complete review. So now to NBC's Justice correspondent Pete Williams and, of course, our Capitol Hill correspondent Casey Hunt, the host of KCDC. Pete, what is the legal situation here?
Well, the legal situation is that the government got a search warrant. Now, this is not the kind of thing where the FBI went on a raid to Senator Burr's house. What we're told here is that the FBI actually served the search warrant on Senator Burr's lawyer, Senator Burr's lawyer, whether that was Alice Fisher or not, the woman you just quoted, I don't know, but a legal representative in any event for the senator, who then notified the senator that the FBI was coming, and when they knocked on the door, he handed them the phone. So this is not a raid. This is just the FBI taking possession of his cell phone with a search warrant. I think the most interesting part of this is simply that the government now has a search warrant. Of course, in any investigation, to get a search warrant, you have to go to a judge and say there's probable cause that you will find evidence of a potential crime on the thing that you're looking for. The difficulty of this case, though, Andrea, is if the government's going to allege that any member of Congress used official information in a committee to commit a crime, then they have to find out what that information is. And in the past, when the government has tried to do that in other cases, they run into the speech or debate clause. It's very hard to do. Now, separately, there's something called the Stock Act that says members of Congress can't use any information that they gain as a result of their office for private gain. But that's not a criminal law. That's just subject to a fine. So it certainly indicates that there's a ratcheting up of the investigation. Whenever you search something or get something from a member of Congress like this, it has to be approved by very senior people in the Justice Department. But beyond that, I don't think we can say a lot here.
And Casey Hunt, there was the case, of course, of a Republican congressman from Buffalo who did leave Congress as a result of an insider trading investigation. In that case, they had images of him on the telephone from the White House itself making these trades, and they had the telephone records as well. But in this case, this is the head of the Intelligence Committee, a member of the Gang of Eight. I've never seen anything like this, and what the allegation is that this senator gained from his knowledge of the private briefings, the intelligence briefings about COVID-19 in January, very early in the game. But he has a complicated relationship with his own party and with this president. Casey?
That's right, Andrea. I will say that the fact that Burr decided to take this step of stepping aside while this investigation proceeds is pretty remarkable, because it didn't seem as though there was necessarily pressure around that. The precedents that have been established previously, we have dealt with things like this in the past, specifically with Bob Menendez, a Democrat of New Jersey. And the official rules say that unless there's an indictment, a formal charge, there seems to be a general acceptance that people can remain in these positions. But I think it underscores the seriousness of how far along this probe has come, that this is what Senator Burr is doing and stepping aside for the time being. Now, that said, the political context of this is particularly striking, and Senator Burr has not made many friends among diehard Trump supporters because of the way he has handled the Russia investigation in his committee. Remember, he's in the final stages of pulling together the investigation, the report about Russia, and the potential collusion, involvement, attempts by Russia to interfere in our election to help President Trump. And in fact, the committee confirmed the Intelligence Committee assessment that that's what happened in April. Some people may have missed that in all of the coronavirus news. So I think that's an important thing to remember as we watch this case unfold. I should also point out, Andrea, that Senator Burr did briefly stop by the pool cameras just a few moments ago to answer some questions. He wouldn't go far beyond what we've heard from his lawyers or anything like that. He simply said he didn't want the distraction of this. So I'm looking to see what Senator Warner, the vice chairman, and others are saying about what they think may have unfolded here. The other little piece of news that we've been reporting, Burr is not the only one, not the only member of Congress who conducted stock trades or had trades conducted on their behalf in the run-up to this pandemic. Senator Dianne Feinstein has answered questions from the FBI, according to her spokesman. She answered some of those questions from law enforcement a couple of weeks ago and turned over some documents as well. Her office says that those documents showed that she had no involvement. We're also reaching out to Senator Kelly Loeffler, Republican of Georgia, whose family and who also sold through a broker stock in the wake or as this was all unfolding before the market crashed amid this pandemic. So some swirling questions across the board. Very clear, though, that right now what's happening with Burr is by far the most serious of these investigations. Andrea.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.